Grosvenor Square 1813 is where our whimsical tale begins as episode 1 of Bridgerton starts with a fair amount of exposition. The upcoming social scene is about to kick off, and the two main players for the season ahead are divided into two households. Lady Whistledown is our gossip girl-esque narrator for this tale, a woman responsible for writing the local gossip rag our women cling to like the Bible. The two families we follow are divided into the Featherington and the Bridgerton households, and all the women prepare for a momentous occasion, meeting Queen Charlotte herself. At the center of this hustle and bustle is one girl whom Lady Whistledown refers to as a diamond in the first water. Daphne Bridgerton immediately catches the Queen's eye as she stands and calls Daphne flawless, the first to receive such an accolade out of 200 or so girls. She steps up and calls her flawless the first out of 200 or so ladies she meets that day. All is not what they seem though as Lady Featherington's cousin, Marina Thompson, arrives on the scene. Lady Danbury is hosting the annual Danbury opening ball that evening, but the arrival of the Duke of Hastings certainly looks like it could turn more than a few heads. This is the night our ladies have been working toward all this time, and now they're determined to find a suitable bachelor without winding up with the dreaded title of spinster, a title Penelope Featherington worries she may receive. Daphne, meanwhile, finds herself fighting off prospective bachelors as her brother bats for her, fending off a man named Ambrose as an alleged cheat. As they go around the room, Anthony warns Daphne against numerous different men, which leaves her to despair. Daphne isn't the only one turning heads though. The elegant Marina Thompson is also turning heads, but it's clear the Featherington sisters are struggling to stand out and feel jealous. Thankfully, the Duke of Hastings, Simon Bassett, arrives on hand, and they seize their opportunity to surround him. As fate would have it, it's Daphne who runs into him. As they talk, Simon reveals that he went to Oxford with her brother Anthony. It's a brief conversation, but one that immediately sees the two crackle and show some real chemistry together. The one girl to turn heads though happens to be Marina, who brings in all the prospect bachelors ahead of Daphne, who remains alone. Lady Featherington, despite garnering all this attention, isn't happy with the attention being on Marina rather than her own daughters. Penelope does seem to be getting along quite well with Colin Bridgerton though. However, there is one prospective man for Daphne, the creepy Lord Berbrooke. Lady Bridgerton clears the room as he begins talking to her, but it's immediately clear this isn't going to work out. Daphne's real issues stem from her brother pushing away all the men in her life, and Lady Whistledown's gossip papers certainly aren't helping. With the wedding matchups underway, prospective bachelor Simon remains determined to pick his wife wisely. For now, he's determined to stay on the market, if you will. He quickly deflects Anthony's questions, especially when Simon mentions his mistress, Sienna, that he's been sleeping with. That evening, Lady Bridgerton joins Danbury in her box at the theater. Only, the Queen shows up too, and mentions that Daphne's impression was fleeting, which immediately causes her confidence to take a battering. However, Danbury and Lady Bridgerton discuss the Duke, Simon, and try to work out how Daphne could woo him. Daphne is sat next to Simon at dinner that night, and the two verbally spar together. She calls him a rake, and it seems marriage is completely off the table, despite what Lady Bridgerton wishes to happen. Despite Anthony's objections, Lady Bridgerton brings up her own son's affair and implores him to do what's best for Daphne. This inevitably sees him leave. The next day, scandalous news breaks as the night's festivities get underway. Penelope meets Colin, and despite her sisters doing their best to dissuade and bully the poor girl, Colin decides to take her off to the dance floor instead. Back home, Lady Featherington realizes that Marina is pregnant. When she confronts her about this, Marina receives a swift slap across the face. Back at the ball, Anthony approaches Daphne and tells her he's made a decision. She's going to marry Lord Berbrooke. Daphne is outraged and refuses to do so. She even tells Lord Berbrooke to his face that she's not going to wed him. As he approaches and grabs her arm outside, Daphne smacks him across the face and knocks him out. Simon happens to be watching and confronts her about Lady Whistledown's gossip rags and the changing fortunes she seems to be experiencing. Given they both have issues with Whistledown, they concoct a plan together to suit both their issues. They're going to pretend to form an attachment. That way, everyone will leave Simon alone, while every bachelor will instantly be drawn to that which they can't have Daphne. With the plan in place and Marina's future still unknown, Lady Whistledown closes out the episode with a suitable signature on a piece of paper, but tellingly no Xoxo in sight. With news spreading of Simon and Daphne's exploits, episode 2 of Bridgerton begins with the pair meeting again and playing up their roles. Lady Danbury and Lady Bridgerton watch from afar and discuss with interest the prospect coupling of these two. Back home, the Bridgerton family are abuzz with the matchup and talk of nothing else. In fact, the one dance they share together is enough for all the prospective bachelors to shimmy over to Daphne's side instead. An angry Anthony shows with Lord Berbrook to find Daphne surrounded by men. With the room cleared, Anthony's forced marriage for Daphne gets back to their mother, who confirms that they need to entertain the notion of Simon marrying Daphne instead. Anthony is having none of it, though, and eventually storms out the room. He immediately finds Simon out sparring in a boxing ring and confronts him over trying to court his sister. Interspersed around the season are flashbacks of Simon himself, allowing us to understand more of who he is. Simon grew up without a mother after she died during childbirth. His father is less than suitable to raise him, believing his son is his one shot to fame. Right now, though, little Simon is struggling to articulate his words, which puts a big dampener on his plans. Thankfully, Lady Danbury is on the scene to help him overcome his demons and learn how to write and read. She takes him under her wing and raises him herself. Penelope shows up in Marina's room and drops off some sweets. As they sit together, Marina talks about her love life and how she had sex with the vicar boy. He's in Spain fighting Wellington, but tends to drop her numerous letters about how they're getting on. It's a match made with love, something that seems pretty rare in this high society of forced matchups and dress-up charades. When Penelope feeds this back to Eloise later in the episode, she can't understand how this love-distance deal could work. Queen Charlotte despairs over the lack of suitable matchups on the marriage council. Instead, she decides to write a handwritten letter to Lady Bridgerton herself. As she opens it up with trembling hands, Bridgerton is invited out to tea with the Queen. For now, it's back onto another evening dance as hostilities between Anthony and Simon continue. Lors Berbrook is there too, of course, but Daphne and Simon remain fixed on their task at hand to make it seem like they're completely in love. When Anthony learns about Berbrook manhandling his sister the night before, he breaks off the engagement himself. When Daphne learns what's happened, she's none too happy with Simon, telling him she doesn't need him to fight her battles. Later that evening, Simon beats down Lord Berbrook outside when he mentions his father and what happened in the past. Of course, this is incredibly painful for Simon, given the disdain his father felt toward him. A final flashback to the past interjects here as we see Simon talking to his father on his deathbed, promising he'll never sire an heir or marry. The next day, Lord Berbrook decides to go above and beyond after the beating he faced the night before. He threatens to take the news of this to Lady Whistledown if the marriage doesn't go ahead, a marriage he's already secured and is due to take place 3 days later. Daphne is understandably devastated, but Lady Bridgerton does her best to try and see the positive side of this matchup. Outside, Eloise smokes down by the swings, but Benedict shows and decides to join her. Eloise wonders whether there's anything more for her than marriage, and Benedict clearly feels the same way. Both of them desire something away from this high society of marriage and seem like the square pegs of the family. Lady Bridgerton meets the Queen and they sit down to tea together. The Queen gushes over the current pairing of Simon and Daphne, but obviously there's a big roadblock in the form of Lord Berbrook. Lady Bridgerton invites Berbrook's mother over for tea, but in doing so, has secretly concocted a plan of her own. She's found out plenty of scandalous information about Lord Berbrook, prompting news to spread like wildfire of this sordid tale. That tale eventually sees Berbrook leave town thanks to Lady Whistledown's gossip rags. That evening, Eloise sits with her sister and talks to her about the game of pretend she's been playing during this marriage season. This certainly rings true for Daphne, especially when she dances with Simon and decides to take charge of her own life. As they dance, Simon tells Daphne to call him by his first name and together, set to work trying to find her a suitable husband. Of course, the irony here seems to be that Simon is the perfect match, something Lady Danbury is quick to point. Lady Whistledown's gossip rags continue to spread news as episode 3 of Bridgerton begins with Daphne rejecting matches in favor of her actual suitor Simon. Of course, she refuses to say this out loud, but a dream featuring the pair dancing seems to hint otherwise. A prince from Prussia called Friedrich is arriving in London, but for Penelope, she's more preoccupied with the mail that unfortunately doesn't arrive for Marina. However, Marina has bigger problems when Lady Featherington decides she should be forced into marriage as quickly as possible to conceal her pregnancy. That evening, the prince arrives as Simon and Daphne commentate on the obvious and orchestrated meeting between him and the various different girls. The queen personally introduces him to Daphne, who immediately giggles when he comments on her dress. After their brief encounter, Daphne tells Simon it's his fault, especially given his earlier quip, as the two continue to get along like a house on fire. Still, there's no time to dwell on this, given Prince Friedrich is the center of attention the next day. With Marina back on the social scene again and everyone converging at the art gallery, Marina is less than enthused to any prospective match on the table. The prince eventually finds Daphne, but she rejects his advances, which seems to only make him want her more. Daphne is more interested in Simon though, who happens to be in a separate room. Together, they comment on how clever they both are as they keep flirting. Eventually this sees them hold hands. At least momentarily, as a cry outside sends them out to investigate. It turns out this was just a feigned swoon from one of the girls to be caught by Prince Friedrich. After the gallery visit, Daphne and Simon both head home, while Queen Charlotte tells the prince he needs to try and win over Daphne. Eloise realizes as much as she talks to Daphne about her prospective matchup with the prince. Lady Featherington takes Marina down to a poor neighborhood to show her what will happen if she doesn't marry. However, it doesn't have the desired effect. Instead, she tries a different tact and mentions her pregnancy and the lack of a reply she's received from Spain. Although Marina comments that it's because of the war and distance between them, it's clear that the seeds of doubt have been planted. Meanwhile, Daphne and Simon head out together as the former contemplates exactly what love is and what makes a good marriage. Simon simply tells her that she'll know when she knows, and gives her advice on how to self-pleasure. Lady Danbury notices how much time Simon and Daphne are spending together and speaks to Simon about his potential matchup. Given Prince Friedrich is a much more suitable match, she's concerned that Simon's lack of action could dissuade Daphne from matching up. In the morning, Simon breaks off his engagement with Daphne and tells her she'll be happier with her prince. It's clear this has hit Simon hard though, as he decides to leave England immediately. Eloise and Benedict share their usual smoke break outside that evening. There, they discuss Lady Whistledown, and he questions whether his sister could be the one writing. Although she scoffs at the notion, it does get her thinking as she decides to try and find the writer. In the morning, Penelope scrambles upstairs with a letter to Marina from Spain. Unfortunately, the letter confirms a breakup and that the baby she carries in her problem now and not his. As we cut across to the adjacent room, it turns out this letter was actually fabricated by Lady Featherington herself. In an act of defiance, Daphne decides to show up to the evening's events wearing exactly what she wants. Anthony meanwhile is given 14 different potential matchups to choose from by Lady Featherington. Of course, the one that he actually wants is Sienna, but her earlier rejection has rattled him. Daphne shows up at the evening's ball looking like $1,000,000 and catches the prince's attention immediately. He asks for the first dance while Simon watches from afar and tries to hide his obvious disdain. Daphne draws looks everywhere she goes after taking the prince's fancy. With the queen on the way, episode 4 of Bridgerton begins with Lady Bridgerton helping herself to a cheeky bite to eat from the buffet table. Eventually Queen Charlotte shows with Prince Friedrich by her side. He has a gift for Daphne, a stunning necklace which he puts around her neck personally. Only, she sees Simon in his stead and struggles to control her emotions. With Daphne on the verge of becoming a princess, even Lady Whistledown is impressed with this match, if her writing within the gossip rags are to be believed. She even foreshadows that Simon won't go down without a fight. Simon is on the verge of leaving England, but before he goes, his friend Will convinces him to stay behind to rally in his corner for the upcoming fight. Prince Friedrich happens to be there too, and brings in Daphne by her side to watch this take place. Daphne is distracted by Simon's presence on the other side of the ring though as they continue to catch each other's gaze. Marina's matched up with Lord Rutledge and forced to show up at the ball that evening with him. Given he wants an heir and won't ask questions, Lady Featherington reminds her that this is her best option. As Marina passes and heads upstairs, Penelope tries in vain to call after her. At the dance that evening, Philippa Featherington is matched up to a possible suitor in the form of a boy called Finch. After his indiscretions last episode at the art gallery, Benedict finds himself catching the eye of painter Henry, who invites him to bring some of his work to his place after handing over his business card. On the other side of the room, Anthony sits with Simon and drinks to him, holding up his end of the bargain with his sister. Just then, Prince Friedrich shows and takes Anthony aside as he asks for Daphne's hand in marriage. When Daphne finds out later that day, she ponders whether to accept this proposal or not. Lady Bridgerton questions her daughter about the Duke of Hastings, as she confirms that what they had together was just a ruse. Daphne claims all of it to be fake, but it's clear she doesn't really believe the words she's saying. Her mother realizes this too and embraces her, an affectionate hug that shows that she knows how Daphne feels. Lady Danbury confronts Simon about him running away and gives a speech about racial equality. Still, no word she says can change his mind as he decides to depart that day on a ship. However, the familiar painting from the gallery might. He sees it on the ground along with the rest of his belongings and has second thoughts. Elsewhere, Eloise goes on the hunt for Lady Whistledown, checking through her maid's belongings to see if she's the infamous writer. However, she simply laughs incredulously at the suggestion. Anyway, that evening another ball takes place as Philippa and Finch wind up dancing together until Lord Featherington says his part and breaks off their potential engagement. Daphne meanwhile eyes up the prince before eventually deciding to dance with him. Benedict shows up at Henry's home where he winds up painting and showing his skills with drawing. Given he's the second son, Henry convinces Benedict to have some fun and loosen up. Penelope and Colin meet up again at the ball, and as the latter draws Marina away from her lord to dance, Penelope watches jealously from afar as it seems this prospective triangle is about to get underway. The prince seems on the verge of asking Daphne to marry him, but she runs away before she can, gasping for air outside and taking the necklace off. As she does, Simon returns and says goodbye to her. As she walks away from him, Simon follows into the garden where he eventually kisses her. He apologizes for being so bold, but it eventually leads to Anthony getting involved and knocking Simon down. Anthony demands Simon marry her after defiling his sister, but he refuses again. Instead of explaining why, given his past honor and promise to his estranged father, Simon's forced into accepting a duel at dawn with Anthony. Tensions are high as both Anthony and Simon prepare for their duel. Just before Anthony goes, he sees Sienna and propositions they leave and go somewhere away from this high society if he's to live past sunrise. It seems to do the trick too, and she opens the door, letting him in where the two make love. That evening, Lady Featherington finds out that her husband is up to his eyeballs in debt and begins weeping, telling her he doesn't know what to do. In the morning, the duel goes ahead, but unfortunately Cressida seems to have spotted them both out in the garden. Daphne races up to see him and finally admits that he's not able to give her children. He pleads with her to let Anthony finish what he started. Instead, Daphne makes a bold decision and decides they should be married. Daphne races back home as episode 5 of Bridgerton begins. She gets back in bed and pretends like the duel never happened. Instead, she approaches Lady Bridgerton in the morning and tells her she's now engaged to the Duke. Daphne claims to be overjoyed as her mother excitedly asks her daughter to reveal all. Daphne tries her best to smile through this, as news of their engagement reaches the infamous Lady Whistledown. The latest gossip centers around whether this is big news or done deliberately to conceal a scandal of some sort. The next day, Simon and Daphne head out again by the promenade, but things are clearly tense between them, especially given Simon has been drinking half the night. When she tries to hold his hand, Simon pulls away. At the Featherington household, the love triangle continues as Colin arrives with flowers for Marina. Penelope is obviously jealous and asks her mother whether this matchup is appropriate or not. She assures her daughter that it is. Anthony meanwhile arrives to pick up Sienna, but learns that she's gone and left town. He's disappointed, but Daphne too is disappointed, given her marriage to the Duke is less thrilling than she expected. Cressida arrives to lend her opinion though, taking Daphne away while she's dress shopping and confirming, in no uncertain times, that she knows what happened that evening. Daphne does her best to threaten back, given she's close to being a duchess, but as Cressida walks away, it's obvious this has had quite the effect on her. Even worse, the Archbishop of Canterbury refuses to indulge the marriage. When Lady Bridgerton finds out, she deduces that it could be Queen Charlotte getting involved. Prince Friedrich decides to head back to Prussia as Queen Charlotte hears that the king has awoken, and he's now lucid. As Charlotte continues to meddle in the affairs of those in high society, Lady Danbury tasks Simon and Daphne to go her themselves and profess their love in front of her. Elsewhere, Lady Featherington is propositioned by Marina to try and woo Colin and win him over instead. In order to do that, she's going to seduce Colin and pretend like the child belongs to him. Penelope, however, happens to be listening from the doorway. In the morning, Daphne and Simon stand before the Queen and admit the truth that they've been fooling everyone. At least to begin with. Simon gives an impassioned confession to Charlotte, confirming that seeing his friend with the prince made his fondness for her grow stronger. What began as friendship has quickly blossomed to romance, and now he can't stop thinking about her. On the back of this, Daphne is eventually allowed to marry Simon. That evening, Penelope pleads with Marina not to seduce Colin, but she refuses to do so, and promises to be a good wife to him. Taking him aside, Marina tries to kiss Colin, but he pulls away and tells her she's a lady. However, he agrees to marry her by the end of the season. Eloise continues her hunt for Lady Whistledown, eventually catching the ear of Queen Charlotte at the party, who wants to know what she's found out. Eventually she agrees to indulge her. In the morning, Daphne heads out with Simon ready to be the Duchess as she bids farewell to her family and their home. Their wedding night is not as lavish as Daphne was expecting, especially when she finds out they'll be staying in an inn that evening due to the long journey back home. Eventually they make it to their destination and finally get a chance to talk. Simon has been distant with her because she wants children and a family, and he can't give her that. However, he does go on to say the words he told the Queen are true. In fact, the truth is they both care for one another, and their love burns. One thing leads to another, and the two finally make love in a very awkward sex scene to close out the episode. Simon and Daphne prepare for their honeymoon as episode 6 of Bridgerton begins. They arrive at Clidon together and are immediately greeted by Mrs. Coulson, who's in charge of the hired help. Before their guided tour, however, Simon intends to show Daphne their bedroom. Eventually, Daphne is shown around by Mrs. Coulson, who makes a point of showing her the nursery which, as we know, won't be used in the foreseeable future if Simon has his way. At dinner, Daphne moves across to sit next to Simon and talks of redecorating the place. With love blossoming between them, they head outside and start kissing in the rain. The old kissing in the rain trope strikes again. Anyway, not long after we're graced with a montage of sex scenes as the two seem very much in love. As the Duke and Duchess busy themselves with the townsfolk and their problems, Daphne's desire to please everyone causes her to inadvertently snub the farmers. This causes them problems with their income. Realizing she's out of her depth, Daphne heads back to the house and takes Mrs. Coulson aside, talking to her about Simon's past. Through her we learn more about his estranged relationship with his father, including rehashed elements of what we've already seen in flashbacks. That evening Daphne learns exactly how to have children, and has sex with Simon again. This time though, Daphne gets on top and forces him to orgasm inside her. Afterwards, she tells Simon he tricked her by lying about the reason for not having children. With both of them gone, back in town, Eloise has been charged by the Queen to uncover Lady Whistledown's identity. Meanwhile, Colin confirms that he's asked Marina's hand to marry, which certainly shatters Penelope's dreams. Anthony confronts his brother about this too, questioning Colin's devotion to Marina and refusing to give him his blessing. Things are tense in the Bridgerton household, eventually leading to the room emptying as Colin speaks to his mother about the marriage. While he believes this is a match made with love, Marina is obviously just using him to change her own fortunes. Penelope is not happy with this and refuses to indulge Marina given what she actually intends to do. The two families are joined together for dinner that evening. Penelope refuses to stand by and listen, taking Colin aside and revealing the truth about Marina. She mentions Marina's love for another and the letters too. Colin refuses to see this though, and it's only made worse when Marina shows and decides they should be wed sooner by heading up to Scotland. As they hug, it's clear there's not really any feelings for her toward him, despite revealing that she loves him. Determined to set things right, Penelope goes hunting for the love letters herself. There, she uncovers the forgery from Lady Featherington. Penelope tries to make Marina see sense, but she instead burns the letters. She defiantly tells Penelope that Colin will accept her despite the pregnancy she's currently keeping a secret. As the episode closes out, the truth about Marina is revealed to the entire estate by Lady Whistledown. Daphne and Simon continue to dance around their problems as episode 7 of Bridgerton begins. Daphne decides to move out from Simon's room, while Lady Whistledown's gossip rag reaches her at Clyden. There, she learns about Colin's woes and hurries back to the Bridgerton household immediately. Given how much power Whistledown has in this society, Eloise wonders whether they can turn their fortunes and spin something positive from this. Marina's deception finds herself shunned, while Colin is forced to stay away from the girl by his family. Daphne suddenly shows up and reveals that the Queen has an upcoming luncheon. It's the perfect opportunity for her and Simon to steal the spotlight away from this current scandal and provide some much-needed respite. As Colin leaves the room, Daphne follows and they talk about the marriage. Colin admits that he loves Marina, despite spending around 30 minutes of screen time with her. Colin senses something is up with his sister and tries to press his sister on what this may be. However, Daphne remains distant and refuses to speak to him about Simon. That evening, Daphne echoes her plan to Simon, who shows up late after fighting with Will in the ring. As they discuss their marriage, Simon decides they should be married in name only. He no longer trusts her, and things are estranged between them. Marina and Colin finally come face to face and confront one another about what's happened. Daphne happens to be watching this take place from across the room and realizes their situation rings far too true to her own. As Colin mentions communication, that key word again, remember. The irony here is that he would have married her if she just admitted the truth. The Queen's luncheon goes ahead as Eloise is taken aside by the Queen to reveal Whistledown's identity. Queen Charlotte is not happy at her indecision though and wants an answer. Elsewhere, Lady Danbury arrives and greets the Duke and Duchess. She invites Daphne along to an upcoming party for females only, which she graciously accepts. They're all interrupted by the shamed Featherington family arriving. Unfortunately, Lady Featherington is shunned by all and eventually forced to leave. Later that evening, Daphne arrives at the Featherington household and speaks to Marina. She apologizes to the girl and understands why she deceived Colin. Daphne turns her attention to George and decides to help her rectify his crime for not replying back to the letters and leaving her pregnant. She's going to get in touch with the general and try to find out what happened to him. Meanwhile, Lord Featherington approaches Will and propositions him with throwing his next fight. If he does, then it would set both of them up for life, and they'll share the winnings. Daphne arrives at Lady Danbury's den of iniquity. As she begins gambling with the others, we cut across to Simon and Anthony sitting together with the other men, drinking in a civilized manner. In a way, this juxtaposition is quite reminiscent of that scene on Titanic, where Jack and Rose danced away in third class, while the first-class patrons sniffily discuss business. Anyway, Simon and Anthony come to blows again, with the sore subject of Simon's father brought into the limelight, and causing them both to skirmish across the room and through a glass table. Eventually, their venomous words are enough to spark the others into action and separate them. Back home, Simon patches up his wounds while Daphne arrives to greet him. Finally, these two talk openly about their issues as Simon reveals the truth about his father and what he promised him on his death. Simon is determined to follow through with his promise, given his hatred, as Daphne walks away. Meanwhile, Eloise and Penn begin narrowing down the suspects surrounding who Lady Whistledown could be. Together, they deduce that it can be a servant, but quite who else it could be remains a mystery. Eloise gets dressed up and heads along to the ball that evening with all the usual suspects. There, Benedict understands Henry's woes as he takes him aside and talks about courage and how he's living outside society's norms. It gives him a lot to think about too as the pair head back to the party. Elsewhere, Queen Charlotte recruits a team of her own investigators to figure out who Lady Whistledown is and quieten the girl down. Eloise walks away, unhappy that she's being taken off the case. There, she stumbles straight into Benedict's path, who takes her outside before picking up Genevieve Delacroix on the way. As they sit together, Eloise believes she may actually be Lady Whistledown. While Marina drugs herself and tries to abort the baby, Daphne takes herself away from the concert as she starts bleeding. Sobbing, her mother hurries to comfort Daphne as it turns out she's not pregnant. With the Hastings Ball due to kick off at the end of the week, episode 8 of Bridgerton begins with Simon making plans to leave. Daphne and Simon both lock eyes, while their portrait is being painted though, trying in vain to disguise their obvious love and affection for one another. Back at the Bridgerton household, Eloise brings her concerns to Benedict about Madame Delacroix, but he refuses to hear it. Elsewhere, Marina has now recovered from passing out and decides to pack her things and head home. She apologizes to Penn for what happened with Colin and tells her that one day you'll see her for who she truly is. Just before Marina leaves, however, she receives a visitor at the house in the form of George Crane's brother, Philip. It turns out George had half-written letters to confirm he loved her, but unfortunately died in battle. Marina is beside herself with grief and tells Daphne that she was wrong for doubting him. Eloise decides to follow up her enquiries by heading to see Madame Delacroix and trying to figure out if it's her. She doesn't get far, though, and eventually leaves. It turns out Benedict was listening from the back hall this time. Will's big boxing match goes ahead, and Simon shows up to watch. There, he watches as WLL throws the fight, while an overconfident Lord Featherington bets the deeds to his house and comes away with big winnings. Simon confronts Will about throwing the fight after, but he refuses to listen to Will's concerns. Instead, he tells Simon to deal with his own marriage for the time being. Back at the Featherington household, Sir Philip asks Marina to marry him. She refuses though, given she doesn't love or know him. Philip wants to realize his late brother's wishes, but Marina instead shuns his offer and tells him to leave. Believing she's no longer with child, she's flat out refusing to indulge in these marriage schemes. Lady Featherington's rotten luck changes when she learns that her husband has just taken home a sizable amount of money from the boxing ring. Thankfully, this means she'll be able to buy new dresses for the girls after all. Marina suddenly experiences sharp pains in her stomach and is rushed to see a doctor. In bed, the doctors confirms that Marina is still pregnant and the tea she drank made absolutely no difference to her situation. Daphne does some research of her own and finds out about Simon's speech problems in the past. Lady Danbury shows and the two discuss how difficult Simon's childhood was and how well she did to raise him. This is enough for Daphne to change her tune as she sits with Simon and eats breakfast. She invites him along to join her at Bridgerton House and greet her family. There, they get along like a house on fire as our various half-baked subplots are given a little more time in the oven. At least momentarily anyway. The final ball of the season is due to begin, and Anthony invites Sienna along to join him. Unfortunately, she decides against this and tells Anthony he's lost. She refuses to get dressed up and tells him to let her go as she's comfortable in her own life without him. Daphne meets Simon, and the two engage in their usual back-and-forth banter again. With Daphne now armed with the truth, the Duke and Duchess prepare for one final dance as the guests arrive. Eloise shows in a ball gown, nervous about potentially matching up at the end of the season, while the Featherington family arrive at the party. Lord Featherington meanwhile finds himself in a lot of trouble as the two men he gambled with corner him in a bedroom upstairs. Colin and Penelope see each other again as the former apologizes for acting foolishly and not seeing the truth. While Penn wants to reveal her true feelings for him, Colin instead turns around and tells her he's leaving town. Penn is heartbroken and eventually races outside. Eloise, meanwhile, learns that Delacroix may be in trouble. The Queen is closing in on who Lady Whistledown is and intending to unmask the identity of her that very night. Eloise does her best to thwart that plan, stopping the guards as they're about to ambush a horse-drawn carriage with her inside. Back at the party, it begins raining as everyone ducks for cover except Daphne and Simon. They both giggle and talk openly with one another. Simon apologizes for what happened between them as Daphne confirms she's read the letters and knows about his past. She eventually tells Simon she's in love with him, flaws and all. This eventually leads to them both sleeping together once more, this time with pure joy and love rather than deception. Back home, Lady Featherington learns that her husband has been killed, and even worse, the money stashed away in her drawer is gone. Despite her despair, she continues to put on a brave face as Marina leaves with Sir Philip, deciding to honor George's wishes after all. Colin leaves too, while Anthony struggles to move forward with his romantic endeavors after what happened with Sienna. Eloise learns that Madame Delacroix is not Lady Whistledown, it's actually Penelope. Oh wow, well done Bridgerton, that's a lovely twist. As we cut forward in time, Daphne gives birth to a beautiful baby boy. Simon holds his child and smiles, deciding they should stick to the Bridgerton family tradition and name him something beginning with A, perhaps average. Given this perfectly sums up where most of the series has sat across its 8-plus-hour run time. The ending explained of last episode. Outside of Daphne and Simon's romance, this series has really struggled to support its front-end shenanigans with strong foundations. Instead, Bridgerton embodies the adage wide as an ocean, deep as a puddle, with a series intent on broadening itself out, but not doing enough with its excellent diverse cast. Even the main romance follows a painfully obvious trajectory as it embodies all the usual hallmarks of rom-coms of old. You've got the romantic gesture in the rain, the miscommunication, dark past, the will they won't they flirting at the beginning, and the fluffy, happy ending. It's all very orchestrated and fairy tale-esque, a jarring juxtaposition with the show's themes of how love and marriage don't always go hand in hand. Eloise, for example, has been portrayed as free-spirited and determined not to follow the norm. It's perhaps a little disappointing to see her following the rest of the girls and seemingly nervous and excited to be showing up at these balls wearing gowns and getting involved in the hustle and bustle of marriage. I was hoping she'd be the beacon of strong femininity in this one, but alas, she's instead turned into another round peg, which is a real shame. Penelope being the true identity of Lady Whistledown is a nice touch, though, and certainly a twist I didn't see coming. In a series of few surprises, this is perhaps the one cherry on an otherwise unfulfilling cake. So let's tackle those subplots. Anthony's will he won't he with Sienna comes to an unsatisfying conclusion, while Benedict and Henry's exploits aren't given anywhere near enough screen time to properly dive into the underbelly of fun and scandalous sex alongside the lavish parties and balls. Meanwhile, Lady Featherington's money woes are given absolutely no time to progress either, eventually leading to an off-screen death for Lord Featherington, and not even a sniff of remorse following his death. And what of Will too? Did he just go happily into the night after winning all that money? This subplot feels completely crowbared in and really hasn't been given the time needed to properly grow, even with a 75-minute run time. Colin eventually leaves on his own accord, while Marina is forced into an unhappy marriage with Sir Philip. Perhaps Marina's storyline is the most disappointing of all, and the lack of screen time shared with Daphne is a real shame, as there was definite potential there for an intriguing team-up. While Bridgerton isn't a bad show per se, it's also not a great one either. Instead, it's a relatively enjoyable and mediocre period offering with some of the best costume design of the year. A shame for sure, but Bridgerton is not one to remember. Bridgerton is a lavishly produced period drama with some of the best costume design work of the year. The sets are extravagant, lavishly dressed and chock full of wondrous characters waiting to be explored in more detail. And yet under this vast ocean of potential is a show with the depth of a puddle. As part of Shonda Rhimes' exclusive new deal with Netflix, Bridgerton is her first foray into historical drama, intending to follow in Downton Abbey's footsteps and deliver the next guilty pleasure binge. While Bridgerton will undoubtedly gain a large following for its familiar tone and much welcome diverse cast, it really doesn't do enough with them to warrant this 8-plus-hour run time. In its simplest form, Bridgerton blends elements of Gossip Girl and Downton Abbey across its story, which takes place in 1800s England. Queen Charlotte is on the throne, and the society here is predominantly divided between two upper-class families, the Featheringtons and the Bridgertons. The centerpiece for this tale is Daphne Bridgerton, who gains the Queen's favor during the upcoming season of societal balls and wedding proposals. Everything seems to be going peachy until two wildcards arrive on the scene for the season ahead. Lady Featherington's niece Marina Thompson rocks up to stay, but holds a dark secret that threatens to destroy their family's credibility. On the other side of the fence is the Duke of Hastings, Simon Bassett, who remains determined to stay a bachelor for as long as possible. Predictably, Daphne and Simon immediately hit it off, but decide to fake their relationship as a way of making Daphne more desirable. After all, the heart wants what it can't have, right? Will it work? Will Daphne find true love, or will she and Simon realize they may be staring at true love all this time? This is typical rom-com territory, and Bridgerton unashamedly hits all the usual tropes you'd expect from this genre. Intending to spice things up, however, the show injects narration from local Gossip Girl Lady Whistledown. Whoever this person is, they seem to know everything and about everyone, and they aren't afraid to write these up in the local paper. This helps keep the series moving, but also adds an element of fantasy to an otherwise grounded series. After all, why would one paper bring the entire society, including the Queen, to their knees? Now, given the screener letter received alongside this full season, we are not able to go into specifics or really talk about many of the specifics across the season. Suffice to say, there's a lot going on here that we were not actually able to share. The recaps accompanying this will reveal more, but to be honest, outside of Simon and Daphne, there's not a lot worth getting excited about. While the main plot line is serviceable, the supporting characters suffer from half-baked, underdeveloped storylines that never really go anywhere. Even worse, most of them actually end on pretty unsatisfying notes. There's a sort of love triangle here that never really materializes, an affair that ends unceremoniously, and a certain character suffering from financial woes that comes and goes as the plot pleases. Despite a strong opening, Bridgerton fizzles out long before the end of its 8-episode run, and never looks like recovering. All the usual hallmarks of the rom-com genre are here, and avid fans will easily predict what's going to happen long before the end. The identity of Lady Whistledown will definitely turn heads. It's easily this reviewer's highlight of an otherwise average show, but beyond this, there just isn't enough to warrant the amount of money spent on this one. Bridgerton could have boldly shone a light on diversity and produced a unique slice of period history to close the year out with. Instead, that bright spark extinguishes into mediocrity with its cookie-cutter story and underdeveloped subplots. Bridgerton will undoubtedly draw plaudits for its simplicity, and fans will love how easy this is to jump in and out of, but it's for this exact reason that the show will struggle to be remembered as fondly as other period dramas of its